Okay, we're back. Milkshakes in meeting. I'm here with Brian Robertson. Brian Robertson, cheers. And I just got to ask you about that crazy milkshake you just ordered in Deaches. What did you get?
Well, my daughter worked at Deaches throughout high school, and she said, hey, you got to try this peanut butter chocolate shake. And so I tried it, and she goes, isn't that just the best thing ever? I said, yeah, it's good. And I said, but are they making that with vanilla ice cream? And she said, well, yeah. And I said, oh. So I went in and said, hey, can you make me one with peanut butter chocolate ice cream and the toppings? And they said, that's going to be rich. And I said, well, I like rich. If you're going to go big. And so that's kind of my deal. That's how I order it. And it is, if you're going to cheat for chocolate, you got to go big or go home. So
yes, when you
I go big.
When you ordered in the toppings, yeah, that took it to another level. I knew it. Vanilla malt, boring. But anyhow, hey, Brian, we're going to get right into it.
All right.
First of all, hey, what is your background? Tell me your background.
Well, my background started out as just a blue-collar kid working in manufacturing when I was still finishing high school. So I started out making $2.60 an hour as the youngest of 13 kids. And so my dad had a stroke, and so life got real. And but I was fortunate enough to kind of continue to finish high school, going to summer school 2 summers in a row, dropped into night school, kind of got promoted up within manufacturing and Guardian Industries and Libby Owens Ford, which is now the Pickleman Group, and then went to work in corporate Japan, and had a lot of good mentors along the way. Like my parents, I'm a recovering workaholic, and moved up the food chain, so to speak, in all of those companies. Was blessed to be promoted, and then about 16 years ago, I left corporate Japan to start a couple companies and a nonprofit. And if I'm going to be a recovering workaholic, I want to make sure I was giving back to others. And so that's kind of been the journey for the last 16 years with our manufacturing company, and as well as Golding & Robertson, which is our operational development consulting company, as well as our property group.
Okay, wow. And now county commissioner.
Yes, I get to serve the public as a county commissioner, which is a very challenging role, a very complex role. County government is kind of the backbone of our community. I mean, it's tied into 1.3 cities, 17 townships, 11 villages.
Wow.
We handle a lot of complex portions of local government. You look at the 11 offices we have, and the law of the land in our community is the sheriff, and they're the head of law enforcement. And you have the courts that handle everything. So if you look at 90% of our arrests take place in Hancock County within the city limits of Findlay. And so the Justice Center, the jailing, the courts, the public defenders, all that's handled through the county. So we're kind of the backbone of those types of services, as well as job and family services out here on 140.
Okay, interesting. You really enlightened me before the camera went on. Would tell me what you do. What do you think the role of the mayor is or should be?
Well, I certainly think the mayor has got to be an ambassador for the community, but we also have to understand that we've got challenges, we've got real problems that have continued, that have frustrated voters, and we just need to have a sense of how to get the mayor's role into one that helps facilitate more collaboration, less of the silo mindset. We've got to start working through some of these problems. We've got about a half a dozen problems that have plagued our community. So, for example, if you're a mayor and you haven't heard about parking, I've been hearing that for 25 years since I came here. But you've got to take problems and turn them from complaints into solutions. And I think in 6 years I've been blessed to have a record of working with others, and sometimes you have to leverage your authority and your position to do what you're elected to do, which is make decisions. And I think when you're in public office, and it can be tough with a political mindset to make tough decisions, but I'm an operations guy, right? So I make business decisions every day, have been for 34 years. And so for me, I don't really have the political pressure of making decisions. And if we make a mistake or we need to readjust or learn from that, then we get better. That's called continuous improvement, and that's what we do in business, and that's what we should do in public service.
Interesting. Okay. Hey, well, why are you better than the other candidates?
Well, I don't know that it's a matter of being better than. I'm not here to judge others.
Okay.
I certainly have been talking about what my record is, my record of results in public office. I have a record of getting problems solved. And I think there's just a clear track record there. You might remember when I came in the office, there were the buildings on North Main that had sat there for 5 years.
Yeah.
They're not there anymore, right? There was the Dornay buildings that had sat there kind of rotting away that were going to supposed to be demoed, and we had an agreement with the state based on taking some state money. We ended up giving a portion of that money back, selling those buildings to a group of investors in the private sector. They were redeveloped into downtown housing, and instead of having 2 holes in our downtown, we just have the Argo hole, and the other has been renovated there. And So yeah, it's really about just kind of making decisions and getting things done. Flood mitigation.
Yeah.
I came in and flew to DC, May of 2013, less than 5 months in office, and met with all the people in DC, walked the Hill, met with the Undersecretary of the Army Corps, and asked him a simple question: how are we going to get federal funding if you take cost benefit on the table? What's the number one thing that matters? He said, "Oh, easy, Brian, loss of life." I said, "Loss of life?" I said, "Tony, we're never going to get funded. This is over. So we need to, understand that funding the Army Corps is not going to lead to federal funding from Congress." I was asked to show a little patience. I did, and 2.5 years later, we left the Army Corps. You know what we're doing right now? We're finishing a construction project, a benching project. That's getting stuff done. But that didn't come without a little criticism. When you try to get stuff done, you're going to get criticized, right?
Yeah, right.
But I think we got to use our God-given talents to just do the best we can do, and trust that in time people will see that you're trying to do the next right thing, the next best thing. So yeah.
I mean, so what do you think is the number one biggest concern right now at going into becoming a mayor? For the city of Finley.
I think what we need to realize is flooding is omni-important, but I think we have to recognize that we've got to really start talking about some of the safety and security issues going on in our community. I've been bringing this up for probably 3 or 4 years, that we're not recognizing that we have a criminal element that continues to come into our community from out of state, from outside our county, that are escalating the amount of drugs coming into our community, as well as some of the violence coming into our community. And we need to make sure that our law enforcement, that our courts and our corrections have the resources needed to deal with those out-of-state drug dealers that are coming into our community, and send a message that we are Hancock County. We don't do crime in Finley and Hancock County.
Wait, now, what do you mean by that now?
When I moved here in 1993, everybody said, well, if you're going to move to this area, you don't want to live in this town or this town or this town, but you want to live in Finley. Finley's a safe community, right?
Yeah.
And I remember being on the marathon on South Main, and I was turned around, right? Because we had maps back then. We didn't have these fancy phones. So I'm sitting there on South Main Street, and I'm at the marathon there in the parking lot. It's like 9:30, 9:45 on a Sunday night. I'm trying to find that Holiday Inn that's up on Trenton, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a little turned around, and I thought Marathon was the hospital in town, right? I didn't realize it was Marathon. It looked like a hospital, right? So all of a sudden, there's a knock on my window, and I'm moving from Indianapolis, and all of a sudden I kind of, whoa, and it's some lady. She's got 2 kids in her car. She says, right on the window, and she says, "Are you lost? Can I help you?" And it's like I have 8 older sisters, 2 daughters, and I'm thinking, you don't walk up to an out-of-state car, knock on a window, right, of a stranger, right? And she's like, but she felt perfectly safe.
Wow.
So she wanted to know,
that's a good
can
story.
I help you find directions? And then, do you have children? I said, I have 2 daughters. We play soccer. I'd never even heard of soccer, right? So she's really wonderful. It says, oh, when you get into town, here's the number, if your kids want to get together with our kids, whatever. But in the time I talked to her, 3 police cars went by. And I'm thinking, I'm a kid from the wrong side of the track, so I'm saying this is why she feels safe, right? And we do have good law enforcement in the community. We need to make sure we have enough law enforcement, and that's really for the sheriff to decide in the county, the chief of police to do in the city. But we have known our jail was at capacity 20 years ago, and no one has made the decision to do anything about it. And so gradually over time, we keep catching people.
Yeah.
And you may have a class 3 or class 4 drug dealer that we have to release on their own recognizance so that they can come back, because we can't hold them the whole time before their hearing. They go back to Detroit, Michigan, and they say, hey, go right down there and sell more drugs because they can't hold us, right? And that's the word that continues to get out about the community.
Interesting.
And so we keep getting these repetitive visits from out-of-state drug dealers, Lucas County, Dayton, Ohio, and we need to recognize that is why you're seeing the amount of break-ins, car break-ins, home break-ins, violent crimes that have escalated. The culture is changing. I mean, everybody knows it. It's like we're not supposed to talk about it because, in Finley we live in this bubble, right?
Yeah,
everything's perfect in Finley. Yeah. We don't have socioeconomic issues, right?
Right.
And so I've kind of been the guy that's kind of been driving this narrative as an elected official, but it's like, you're supposed to talk about all the good stuff. We have a lot of great things, right? But I'm a business guy. I also was raised by a father born in 1915. God rest his soul, he'd be 104 this June. But I was not raised to get a lot of attaboys. I was raised to say what work needs to be done now. And when you work in business, you get told, I don't want to hear about all the good measurables today. Why is this particular production line have scrap? That's what we want to talk about today. So you got to talk about what your problems are, and you got to improve your problems so you can be in business in 2 years, in 10 years, and in 20 years. And so when I come into a situation, I see all the good stuff. That's great. But we got to identify our weak points and in a step-by-step manner work to take care of our weaknesses so we can maintain ourselves as a strong community in 10 or 20 years, just like we want to be in business in 10 or 20 years.
Okay, that's good stuff, Brian. That's good stuff. Hey, okay, the buildings that are gone.
Yeah.
The north of the river there.
Yeah.
So you were kind of in charge of that, getting rid of those?
They've been sitting
and if so, I mean, what do you think we should do with that area?
Well, those buildings, in terms of getting it processed, it's difficult to get stuff done, right, with the state. And I just started working and calling the state. I got out all the project binders that were there, went through them, and you just got to work the system. It's a process, And a lot of things that, we were able to finish up, it's no different than me being in office today. You have another set of commissioners that move the ball this far down the field, right? And we move it further down the field. And I think for myself, I don't ever look at like we've ever got to the end zone. I think you get it to the red zone. And you get as many things to the red zone as you can, but it's going to take, generational leadership to keep moving us in the right direction. Because the goal is not the touchdown. The goal is keep making things as good as they can possibly be. And so if you get to the end zone, you're going to celebrate. We don't need to celebrate. We need to just keep working towards the end zone. So
okay.
And then the green space really needs to become community space. I think a lot of voters feel like, related to downtown, the voters and the taxpayers won't listen to, right? I get that. We got so many calls at the commissioner's office about the downtown renovations, just like the city gets a bunch of calls saying, what do you do about flood mitigation? Well,
right.
That's a county issue. The downtown renovations was a city decision. So,
okay.
So people get confused, and that's all right. Government is government. It gets a little confusing for those of us who serve in it. So, but
what can we do about parking? Can we put parking lots there, or is that
well,
bad?
I had this conversation at the Women's Republican Forum the other day because, that came up to all the candidates. I said, I just want to point out the big picture here. We had a municipal parking garage, right? We did. We sold it. The city sold the municipal parking garage. You might remember that, right?
Yep.
And now it's been sold again to another business owner. So we had a municipal parking lot, and the problem now is if you put a parking lot like where the old Time Warner building used to be, like across from the Marathon Performing Arts Center, that library, that parking space. If you put a parking garage there, well, the Marathon Performing Arts Center has all the parking spaces they need, right? But no one is going to walk from that parking garage to where all the activity is on Main Street. So I think ultimately it's going to be a demand. If the demand's there, you'll get maybe a public and our private sector partnership where we can get some additional parking structures built. But there's got to be enough activity downtown, not just during the workday, but in the evenings, to drive the utilization to justify building the infrastructure.
Okay.
Right? And so I think that's going to be a process. But again, I believe you have to lay out a game plan. And we have lots of people that have been in office that can say, well, now you give me another 4 years and I'll suddenly start making a plan. Well, what'd you do the last 5 years? Did you make any plans? I mean, I can lay out so many things that have been put into plans and then turned into action and turned into results across different offices, different agencies, different entities. And I just think that's because I have more of a business mindset in terms of how I operationally look at stuff. So,
okay. So what do you think about, this affordable housing for people that make $15 an hour? This is a problem?
It is. Housing is a problem, but I think we need to talk about it in terms of available housing, right? Affordable housing. I grew up around low-income housing, literally. I grew up low-income and grew up around a very urban setting. So I think it would be better to talk in terms of available housing. And I think there's talk about, we need to keep having these developers come in because, in the city, the largest housing growth has been apartments, right? That's in terms of roofs overhead. And a lot of the housing is now being built outside of the city, which means that income tax, in a sense, can be going outside of the city, right?
Yeah.
So that's a problem when you look out 10, 20, 30 years. So, there's talk of, let's bring in a bunch of big outside developers and home builders that build 500, spec homes. Let's bring in subsidized housing folks. And I really think the conversation needs to start with our local renters association. It needs to start with our local builders and our local developers. Let's get them at the table because these are people who have been benevolent in our community for decades. They've invested in our community. They donate to our community. And let's start the conversation with them versus saying, let's go out and bring outside entities in who are not stakeholders in our community, may develop a property. 10 years later, that property may not be maintained. but let's talk with our local community business partners, because really all things are local. In government, all things ultimately are local. And so I really want to have that dialogue in that direction. And I think that takes leadership. I think it takes somebody that can build the trust to say we're going to have an honest, open conversation, but we're not going to point fingers. But those are our stakeholders. And so why in the world would you keep looking to these outside entities? A lot of them come from out of state, versus talking with our local community business people and investors that have been doing this for decades. So think about how many family builders we used to have and how many of them are not here anymore.
That's a good
And
point.
that's a shame. Think of the parade of homes we used to have that we don't have anymore, right? We've got to engage that group. It's vital that those family businesses stay family businesses in our communities, because they go to our church, they contribute to our local charities, they volunteer and donate to our local habitat projects. And so it's very important to not leave them out of this conversation.
Oh, good point. Okay, to finish it off, these are my two issues that I like to talk about, and they're probably not really high up there.
You're bigger than me, so they're going to become a priority for me, big guy.
Bikers in Findlay, man. It's just not a biking town, like as in bicycle, you know.
Well, you're talking to a guy that's done 10 Ironman triathlons.
I know.
So I might have ridden a pedal bike once or twice around this town. So yeah.
Is that in the near future? I mean, I know they're doing some stuff here and there, but man, Findlay just does not have a good concept of, realizing that bikers have the same rights as automobiles.
Correct.
You know?
And I'm a guy that actually served as in a court where you have a juror. I was the chief juror, the lead juror, whatever, jurist or whatever, for an accident involving a young girl that was hit on a bicycle in Indianapolis.
Okay.
And I didn't disqualify because they said, "Do you ride a bike?" And I said, "Well, I ride a bike." And they said, "Well, we don't know that we want this particular whatever witness." And then I got asked a question by the judge that said, what is the rules for riding a bike? And I said, you got to ride a bike within the same rules as an automotive vehicle, obey all the same traffic rules as the vehicle, and maintain all your directions, same as if you were in a vehicle.
Yeah.
And they said, that's a fantastic answer. You're going to be on the jury. And so in our community, we've actually are having the talk, we're having the dialogue. There's some give and take issues with what's going on along the river to make that bike path work through there.
Yeah.
And if you know the one path that's constantly just flooded out down there, it's not very feasible. But I think ultimately we got to figure out how to make that a little safer. And we also got to realize there's a cost of bike paths. So, in some cases we can, potentially create a bike lane at no cost. But I've been saying forever, when 236 is widened between Sandusky and Tiffin, and goes to 4 lanes, put the money into the bike path then, because that's a huge connector road.
Yes.
That gets you over to Riverbend Park, right?
Yep.
And then that starts navigating you, at least on the back way, all the way to South Main on Olive Street, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell.
So when is that going to get wide?
You might have. You can tell I've ridden a bike in this town.
Yeah.
But that project is now coming forward. I mean, that was a project that was supposed to be done 20 years ago, right?
Okay.
So, but it's starting to come together.
Okay.
And, but that's going to be what I consider to be the great connector for a bike path, because it's really going to connect 2 main corridors along 568 and Tiffin Avenue. And I think there's a lot of people that are certainly working towards that, thinking towards that, both in the biking community as well as with the city and the county. And we also have to work with the state a little bit to try to get some state money on our bike paths.
Okay. Good info. Cigarette butts. That's littering. That's littering.
Hate it. You're not.
Nothing we can
now
do
you're
about
getting
it,
in my
can we?
wheelhouse. You're getting in my wheelhouse. Oh my God.
It kills me.
I can't stand it.
It kills me.
Every time I see him flick it out in a car, I'm the guy that honks their horn and gives them the little no. Don't be doing that. You got an ashtray in the car, put it to use.
Okay,
right? Yeah.
I appreciate that. Anyhow, hey, we got to wrap it up here.
No worries.
Brian Robertson, I appreciate that. Hey, good luck. A week from Tuesday?
Couple weeks. We'll see what the people have to say if they want to give me the nod. So yeah.
All right, man. Hey, drink your shake now.
Thanks, brother.
All right, bro. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for watching.